So, I just got finished watching an interesting video on new versus old Disney by Cellspecs, link in the description, talking about the differences between Disney 80 years ago and Disney today. I recommend you check her video and her channel out, especially if you enjoy old Disney. Today, though, I want to talk about something a little bit different. People are constantly praising DreamWorks for the very first Shrek, or Pixar for the very first Toy Story as being innovative and fresh. But why do people praise these movies more frequently than modern movies like Coco or Monsters University, both of which, in my opinion, are fantastic? Is it because they were so new at the time that people can't stop praising them? Or is it because Toy Story is just a better constructed movie than, say, Coco? Today, I want to explore a new topic I haven't seen anyone talk about yet: how animation studios change as they progress. Part 1. How did this happen? A good question to start with is, how did we get here? How did we get to the point where there are so many different animation groups? It's a question that I think a lot of people would like to see answered. Why can't we just have one animation company? I think it really comes down to identity. Walt Disney wanted to create animation because he wanted to explore animation as an art form, not because he wanted to use animation to convey a different style of film. In other words, animation back then was less about story and character and themes, and more about exploring the capabilities of animation. Disney was fine with making animation that was driven by atmosphere and beauty, rather than making a movie about themes and character depth. However, as Disney progressed, they slowly started making movies that had characters with personality. These are movies like Pinocchio, Alice in Wonderland, and The Jungle Book. These movies, oddly enough, had side characters that had way more personality than the protagonist. Disney started to evolve after this, making their first character relationship movie, Fox and the Hound, which was decent. I'd put it in the average tier list category. After this, there were a couple of flops that led right to the Disney Renaissance era. This era was very, very, very important for animation, because it was then that groups of people realized that they too could make animation movies that had new stories to tell. Before this, no one really wanted a new animation group. What? More people to give us storybook worlds like Cinderella? Pass. However, now that Disney showed that animation could be used to create gorgeous visuals and compelling stories that led to critical and financial success, other companies went, "Hey, this would be really beneficial." It was also during this time that new ways of making animation were starting to be thought of. In 1995, Pixar released Toy Story, the very first movie that had been done with CGI. From then on, this is very important, every new animation studio released would either be released because they had a new way to explore animation, or because they had a new idea that could only be explored through animation. Next was DreamWorks in 2001, who came out with Shrek. This movie was told with CGI, which was very new after only being introduced 6 years later. But it was more than that. Its premise was that it was a parody of Disney movies after decades and decades of them being saturated in the animated market. That was about ogres and sentient donkeys. Obviously, you have to use animation for that. Blue Sky? Ice Age had to have been told through animation. Illumination? Despicable Me had to be told through animation. Laika? Coraline had a new way to explore animation. I think you get the point. Now that we're caught up, let's go to part 2. The opinion of the populace. When companies develop, the one thing they need to figure out in order to be successful is their identity. The identity of companies is the most important thing to define critical and financial success. I mean, except for Minions. I'm going to compare the new Warner Brothers company and Illumination to express my point. The Warner Brothers company made the Lego Movie, a movie that was very different in that it was made to trick people into thinking it was stop-motion Lego. More than that, however, this company told the general public that they were going to be known for their wild and incredible animation, as well as their quick, exaggerated comedy. As such, they have tried to improve both of these things since their first movie in 2014. One of the core reasons that this company is so well regarded is because of its identity, as something different. It was never trying to be Disney or anyone else. It has grown on top of its foundation, and it has been very, very beneficial for the company. Illumination, in my opinion, is the complete opposite. Despicable Me, a movie that is known to be quite good. At first glance, it looks like this company is off to a great start with this film, as it looks pretty innovative and new. It's going to make movies about supervillains until you realize that Illumination literally has nowhere to go from here. They're going to keep making Despicable Me movies. That's going to get boring. After making 3 movies about the same franchise out of their 4 movies, Illumination came out with Secret Life of Pets. This movie was exactly like every other movie released in the past 50 years. 90 different subplots, boring characters with stupid personalities, and other overdone cliches. They had no identity and just tried to make their movies like every other, which was their ultimate downfall. It's also worth mentioning that I'm not saying it's only big studios like Disney who can do overdone cliches. I mean, the point of Frozen is that it flips cliches on its head, and that was very profitable for Disney. The problem is that cliches are very hard to use today because practically every movie and every book and every form of media you can possibly imagine has used an abundance of them. I mean, when was the last time you saw a movie without a romantic subplot? In fact, I think I'm going to make a top 30 worst cliches ever someday. It's going to be one of my next videos, I'm sure. Illumination from then on lost everyone's attentions because their movies were filled with these tired cliches found in countless other movies. The only way a piece of media can be appreciated is if it introduces something new. Yeah, maybe Romeo and Juliet was revolutionary during Shakespeare's time. But if that play was to be shown today, it would be a disaster. No one would like it because of its lack of originality. Part 3, Steps. We have talked a lot about companies and their originality, and what companies fall into the same tired cliches and what ones are very good. But we haven't talked at all about what steps they usually take in order to become an animation company in the first place. That's what I'll talk about right now. Also, keep in mind that these are outlines, not strict rules that every company follows. This is just something I've noticed. There are 3 steps. Step 1, the first movie. This one is pretty self-explanatory, but it's important to talk about when we lay out our thesis and what we've learned. The first movie a company makes is almost always tied to their identity. The textbook example is the Warner Brothers group with their first movie, the Lego Movie, which I've talked about extensively in this video so far. Their identity is sharp, quick, and funny humor delivered expertly and a new way to animate. This identity is then followed through on in their next movies. Segue to Step 2, developing what made the first movie so good. This step is where companies split. There are pretty much 3 subcategories a company chooses to go down. 1, company chooses to look at what they've made and they try to improve it without copying the magic of the original. Laika's first movie was Coraline, a movie that was created the identity of dark tone and atmosphere mixed with flawless stop motion. They have made both of these things better since Coraline. And if anyone's interested, Laika is my personal favorite animation group right now. 2. A company chooses to look at what made the first movie better and completely copy the magic of it, either creating sequels or making movies that are super similar. As I said, Illumination made 3 Despicable Me movies when they only had 4 out. 3. A company decides that they have grown so much since their first movie that they want to scrap their entire identity and try something radically different. DreamWorks in 2010 decided that they would stop making parody movies like Shrek or Megamind, released that year, to make things a little bit more character-focused. This is Kung Fu Panda, How to Train Your Dragon. Step 3, money. Again, not much to explain here, but I do have one thing I want to talk about. This is usually the steps where the company has enough money that they can choose to keep providing movies tailored to their genre, or they can try to bring something new. I actually want to talk about Blue Sky in both examples. In 2015, Blue Sky was not looking good. Their best film, in my opinion, was Rio 2, only because there are some things that I really like. Do I like it? Sure. Is it good? Not really, but I like it. But then Blue Sky released a film that I could not believe existed. The Peanuts movie was so expertly told and so expertly animated that I recommend it heavily. It goes without saying that this is the best film they ever or will ever make. Though the new Spies in Disguise film looks pretty good so far. Anyway, the point is that they use their money to bring something new. Illumination would never do that. Then again, Blue Sky isn't exactly known for favoring good films over money. I mean, who even asked for 5 Ice Age movies? And that's where the steps lie for now. I guess we'll have to see how the companies evolve over time. So, what did we learn besides Illumination is awful? What? 1. The reason there are so many animation companies is because new companies are constantly more and more motivated to bring a different way of animating or want to tell a story strictly through animation that isn't exactly the Disney vibe, if you will. The reason Disney was able to conquer animation for so long is because in the beginning, people thought that animation could only be used for cute cartoonish fun. Laika's critical success and Illumination and Blue Sky's critical failure can be attributed to cliches and their originality of their movie ideas. 4. Cliches themselves are very difficult to do right now because they are so overdone and boring. 5. There are specific steps that many animation groups usually take. Wow, we've covered a lot. Is there anything you wanted to hear that I missed? I may make a part 2 if it's well received. I really like talking about this. Did you guys like this type of video, or do you prefer one of my other videos? Funny enough, I too am experimenting with my identity as a YouTuber and would love to hear what your favorite video was. I think my favorite one was making the tier list, but they were all really fun. Comment which one was your favorite and check out my other videos if you thought this one was interesting. Thanks. See you in the next video.